everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this CREST webinar. And today you're going to be hearing about the skilled person registration. Very shortly I will be passing over to Roland Johnson, the CREST president, and Jonathan Armstrong, the CREST principal accreditor, to go through that presentation. There is an opportunity for you to ask some questions at the end of this presentation, so please feel free to do that. We usually like you to pop those questions in the question and answer pane, and you can find that on your sidebar. So please feel free throughout the presentation to put those questions in, and we will get them asked of Roland and Jonathan at the end. So thank you very much, and over to you, Roland.
Thank you for that introduction, Debbie. So yeah, over the next half an hour or so, both Jonathan and I are going to try and describe the mechanics of the skilled persons registration process. But I'll start off by really describing the backdrop of why we launched this earlier this year. So Jonathan, would you mind going to the first slide, please? So I guess the backdrop to all of this is there's a number of challenges within the global cybersecurity market. Clearly, many organizations are spending vast amounts of money to try and build cyber resilient environments. Yet, despite that, they still find their systems being compromised and data being stolen. As a consequence of that, many governments around the world are saying, okay, how can we come in, get involved, and try and correct that market failure? So pretty much in every direction we look at, there is discussion from governments and regulators of introducing new legislation and new regulation. One of the challenges with that as an approach is regulation and legislation typically is domestically focused. And so as a consequence, we are sort of unconsciously walking towards a world where there's increased legislation and regulation, which then in turn introduce standards, but there is an opportunity for some of those standards to be misaligned across geographies and regions around the world. In addition to that, there is significant disconnect between buyers and sellers. And what we mean by that is, if you work within the cybersecurity industry, you will be potentially well versed in three-letter acronyms. You might be able to explain the difference between a security assessment, a penetration test, a vulnerability assessment, a red team exercise, a threat assessment, a risk assessment. However, if you're not in the industry, they all sound pretty much like the same thing. And so as a result, what we find is this disconnect between what a buyer thinks they're after and what a service provider thinks that they're selling. And so as a consequence, that can result in suboptimum outcomes where an organization think they're going to achieve ABC from an assurance activity, but actually receive something completely different. Furthermore, there's lack of clarity on actually what some of these services are. So I just talked about security assessment and penetration testing, but what is a pen test? Is a pen test something that looks at breadth, or does it look at depth? Should organizations be testing infrastructure or application? Should they be looking at the third-party supply chain? Should they be looking at cloud technologies? And so again, a fair amount of misalignment and market failure. And really, what I think we could all collectively say is that there's a degree of misalignment and no consistent expectation of what good looks like. In addition to that, what we're seeing is governments and regulators and some other non-profit cyber organizations trying to define standards. And what they're saying is, okay, there needs to be a minimum set of skills within the industry. Let's take examinations and certifications from this body and this body and try and somehow tie them together and introduce some form of equivalencies. And as a consequence, what that's really doing is causing a whole load of confusion and uncertainty within the market. So Jonathan, could you flip to the next slide? In the UK market, an organisation has been set up called the Cybersecurity Council, and they have been working for the last 18 to 24 months to try and define what professional competency looks like. Trying to understand what kind of knowledge is required, what kind of skills and what kind of competency measurements are appropriate. There are similar kind of initiatives taking place out in Asia. and in Europe and in Australia as well. And it's really easy to initially say, okay, we need to define a bar, we need to define skills and competencies, but it's exceedingly challenging as to how you go about doing that. A number of governments around the world have introduced frameworks that, in essence, signpost to skills and competency. So in Hong Kong, HKMA had a program which many of you will be aware of called ICAST, and it signalled skills and competencies that were relevant for the delivery of threat intelligence and red teaming. They came up with a slightly different answer to the European Central Bank, who also signposted the appropriate skills and competencies that they felt were appropriate for delivering intelligence red teaming. Similar kind of engagements, but a very different set of skills and competencies. The CORI framework in Australia is a similar example, where the Australian Financial Services Regulator came out with a standard that says intelligence-led red teaming is important, and these are the skills and competencies that we think are required to deliver those types of services. And if you look at each of those different frameworks, they've all said skills and competencies are important, but the skills and competencies they've drawn out are not the same. So as a consequence, we were in this strange conundrum where industry has said skills and competencies exist. Regulators say we need to signpost to them so that it becomes easier for buyers to select suitably skilled service providers. But there isn't really a whole load of agreement as to what the appropriate skills and competency measurements should be. And of course, the last thing to say on this is demand for services is massively outstripping the supply of skilled and competent people that exist around the world. So what we're often finding is regulators are saying, okay, we want to deliver services that are focused on financial services or critical national infrastructure or systems that are critical in nature. We feel that there needs to be a level of skill and expertise, which is up here at the highest levels. And as a consequence, they come up with a framework to measure skills and competency, which actually is restrictive in nature. And there aren't enough people in industry that are able to deliver at that level or above the level. And again, what that means is some of the frameworks fall slightly short of expectation because there aren't the skills and capabilities within the industry to deliver against the requirements. We have this strange tension of suppliers wanting to be able to deliver services, wanting to attract skilled and competent people, but not being able to find the talent within the global market as it stands today. So that's the backdrop as to the challenge that we all face. Jonathan, if you could just move to the next slide. So earlier this year and at the tail end of 2021, the CREST team, in conjunction with the councils, did a pause and reflect and said, okay, what is it that we stand for? What is it that we're looking to try and achieve? What are our goals, our aspiration, our vision, and our mission? Now, many people along the journey have said, well, that's easy, CREST. You go off and assess organisations and you run examinations. And of course, if you look at the detail, those are things that we do. And we have had a strong reputation in delivering high quality accreditation and high quality exams that measure the skills and competencies of people around the world for many, many years. But actually, really what we're trying to do is provide signposting to buyers as to who suitably competent and skilled organisations and who their workforces are. What do I mean by that? So when an organisation goes out and procures some form of cybersecurity service, they want to have confidence that the organisation they engage with are fit and proper, that they are going to contract with them in an appropriate fashion, that they will have the appropriate insurances and risk management processes behind the scenes, that any data that is accessed is securely stored, any reports that are generated are securely transmitted. They'll want to make sure that the methodology for conducting whatever accredited service is being delivered is repeatable. And there's a bunch of things that a buyer would expect of the organisation. In addition to that, though, they hope that the person that's coming and delivering the service for them is skilled and competent. Or at least what they're expecting is that the person that's coming to deliver a service is aligned with the roles and responsibilities that they're expecting. So if they're expecting a junior person, no problem, it can be a junior person. If, however, they're expecting somebody that is a senior professional, again, they would expect that the skills and competencies that turn up on site are commensurate with that job role. And of course, one of the challenges today is that it's not very easy to work out what skills and competencies fit with the junior level of the team and those that sit with the senior level. I don't think many buyers explicitly say, I want somebody that has a CREST badge or an offensive security badge or a SANS badge. What they specifically say is, I want to make sure that this person that's here today to do a service is appropriately skilled, appropriately competent, and can deliver the outcomes that I need. The badges, the certifications, the qualifications are indicators. Sometimes it allows them to comply with regulatory frameworks, but it isn't the badge specifically that they're focused on. And when you take that vantage point, you say, actually, our vision isn't one really to run examinations, it's to provide better signposting of skills and competencies back to the buying community. So the vision statement that we shared with our members in the EGM back last month was one where we say, Crest builds trust in the digital world by raising professional standards and delivering measurable quality assurance for the global cybersecurity industry. It doesn't specifically focus on accreditation. It doesn't specifically focus on examinations. All of those elements are important ingredients, but the vision is something that is a step higher than just running exams and measuring the skills and competencies of organizations. Jonathan, could you flip to the next slide? Often when I go out and engage with governments and regulators around the world, and indeed speak to our member organizations, I talk about Crest mission in 4 different building blocks. We talk about capability, capacity, consistency, and community. Instead of it just being marketing blurb, I'll try and explain what we mean by those 4 phrases. So capability is really a measurement of saying we want to have the ability to measure an individual's capability, to encourage more capability within the market, and in essence to support a career pathway where capability might start here, but it moves to here, it moves to here, it moves to here. And so as a consequence, we are laser focused on helping organizations and individuals measure their capability and develop their capability through accreditation, through examinations, and through things like the Skilled Persons Register. But capability as a measurement isn't the only thing we're focused on. We're also acutely aware that there is a capacity challenge within the market, and we need to be doing more to try and get more people into the industry. Many of you will be aware that earlier this year, we talked about a relationship that we formed with both Immersive Labs and Hack the Box. Now, the reason that we formed both of those relationships is due to a recognition that measuring capability through examination and certification is great and has value within the market, but actually you need to provide a better and more structured career pathway that includes education and training before somebody can actually take the examination. And so as a consequence, that partnership with both of those entities is really designed to try and pump prime the market and build additional capacity. We also work extensively with a number of universities, colleges, and academic institutions in the world to try and look at syllabuses that are being taught and try and encourage them to be better in tune with the needs of the market. So capacity, again, is a big area of focus. It doesn't strike us that the right approach to all of this is having high standards in one country, medium standards in another country, and low standards in a third country. Actually, what we really need to try and strive for is having consistent approaches and consistent standards. Back on that first slide, I talked about the fact that there is increasing amounts of regulation and legislation looming. And although on one level, regulation and legislation can be useful for closing the information gap, it can also result in inconsistent practices that are executed across the world. And we're not sure that that really helps aid international business. In fact, it probably creates additional friction to international business. So one of the things that Crest is very focused on is trying to build consistent outlooks. If an organisation, or a government rather, wants to define a standard, we actively try and encourage them to look at the other standards that might exist in other regions around the world and either calibrate up or down to try and come out with a more consistent viewpoint. Similarly, when we look at skills and competencies in markets, we're looking to try and build consistency across all countries and all regions, so that instead of a buyer saying, well, I want to deliver a specific service, or have a specific service delivered from my organisation, and being hamstrung saying, I have to buy from this country or from within this region. Really, if we can build standards globally, that surely presents a much better outcome for the industry at large. And I guess the last piece that I'll add is we are actually really focused on building the cybersecurity community. Now that means working with all of the different stakeholders I've described: governments, regulators, academics, exam takers, organisations. But it also means working very closely with other not-for-profit organisations. Instead of recreating the wheel, what we're looking to try and do is signpost to other things that are good enough. And so that has been a slightly recalibrated approach for 2022, where we are more likely to signpost to other things that are good enough, work with other non-profit organisations, collaborate more with governments and regulators to try and build a consistent cyber community that spans all corners of the world. Could we flip to the next slide, Jonathan? So I think at that point, I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, who will now sort of hone in on what it is that we're trying to do with the skilled persons registration process. Jonathan.
Cheers. Thank you, Roland. So building upon what Roland was just talking about, the next couple of slides are just going to look at sort of a high level why we're asking members to do this and the benefits that we hope will be achieved by starting this skilled registration process. And then we'll just talk through the steps that are required in order to facilitate this to happen. So as Roland said, you know, building upon where Crest was a few years ago and where we are now, we're seeing that we've got this increased internationalization of our membership. And what this means for Crest is that we have a reduced insight into the skills and competencies within our member companies. So in the past, where we were able to look towards the Crest examinations, as this membership becomes more international, that becomes less applicable. The idea around the skilled person registration register is that we can capture a much more inclusive understanding of the certifications and experience that our individuals that are providing services via Crest member companies hold. And this will give us the ability to demonstrate this back to buyers and also back to stakeholders via either the buyer's journey on the Crest website or by doing like an anonymized skill assessment. This could be done on like a regional basis or a sector basis and so on. The increased insight that we get by having an understanding of the certifications and examinations that people have sat will also allow us to have a much more data-driven approach to the future development of Crest accreditations, which will hopefully help to bridge those gaps that we spoke about earlier in terms of the regulator frameworks and so on. So the benefits to members hopefully is that this will allow us to give better signposting of members to buyers via the Crest website, which will help us to connect buyers to members with skilled and competent teams that meet the requirements of those individual buyers. It will also increase accountability, as via this process individuals will sign up to the Crest Code of Conduct, and which will help Crest to enforce those standards, behaviours and expectations that we've put in place. And then finally, it will increase that differentiation between member companies with very highly qualified and skilled teams, and then member companies, you know, with less qualified, skilled and competent teams. So in terms of the process itself, we've designed this to be as simple and straightforward as possible. We're asking that the member companies provide the list of the individuals that are performing services on their behalf, and they can do this via the Crest membership application portal. So there's a program within the portal which is called the Skilled Person Account Registration, And essentially that is a single upload task that requires a spreadsheet of the name, so the first name, last name and email address of the individuals that you'd like to register. So once that's been provided to Crest, we'll then send an invitation to those individuals to access the Crest membership application portal. They will then be able to complete the skilled person registration program, which will be available to them on the portal. Once that's been completed and then submitted to Crest, we'll perform a review just to ensure that we've received everything correctly, that the code of conduct's been signed, and that the information appears to be accurate and not misleading. So once the individual's been approved, they'll be added to the Crest skilled person register, and they'll be issued with a unique Crest ID, which will be sent to them at the end of the month that they submitted their application. What we're encouraging with these Crest IDs is that the individuals include those on any reporting activities that they do that relate to a Crest accredited service. And this really help with that in terms of that tracking of the individual's work in the future if there's any problems and so on. So that sort of explains the process at a very high level. We just got a couple of slides just to show what that looks like in reality. So the member company access to the membership application portal is usually via the individual that either completed the initial application to join Crest or any subsequent applications to add disciplines and so on, or the person that's responsible for completing the renewals if that's a different individual. So that person will have access to the skilled person account registration program, which you can see on the right here. And that's the single upload task that I just outlined before. And then the program next to it on the screen on the left here is the skilled person registration, which is the program that would be given to the individuals once they've been added into the portal. So what kind of information are we looking to capture here? So the form for individuals is split into various components. There's a quick declaration just to ensure that the information that's being provided is accurate and obviously not misleading. The second element is a form to capture the personal information of those individuals. That allows us to obviously identify who they are and to attach them to our CRM and obviously the skilled person register itself. And then there's a form for selecting the areas of specialism. So on the right here, you can see that we've identified a number of different specialisms within the accreditation and beyond what the accreditations are that Crest offer. And each of these forms will link to additional questions, which we'll just show an example of on the next page. So here we've chosen the penetration testing specialism, so that's now been given as an additional task in the registration form. And you can see sort of like a high level sort of overview of the questions we're asking. So we're looking at things about experience, so how many years have individuals been involved in scoping, delivery, sign off, and so on. And then in terms of examinations, as I mentioned, we've intended for this to be as inclusive as possible. I've just given a brief snapshot of the exams that we've asked individuals to identify here. There's obviously a lot more in there, so offensive security as well, EC Council, SANS, etc. So we're just asking individuals to confirm, you know, what examinations they've taken, what certifications they hold, and then also additionally things about how they develop their skills and ensure that they're at the top of their game. So, you know, do they use online labs? Do they have any external training courses that they attend? Do they do internal training, and etc. So the information that we're asking for is information that we hope individuals will be happy to share with us, and this will really help to influence the future of Crest and obviously allow us to display members back to buyers in the best possible way. As I said, that's a very sort of high level, brief introduction to the skilled person registration process. I hope it's explained the process, but what we'll do now is if we open up for questions, hopefully we can help answer any of those that people have to help them on with this process.
Great, thank you very much there to Roland and Jonathan. Much appreciated for all that information. So this is your opportunity to ask any questions that you want to. Please feel free to put those in the pane, the question pane, and we can get those asked for you. And also you can type them into the chat function as well. But you do have Roland and you do have Jonathan on this call right now, which is really helpful. So please pop those questions in there.
I'll stick with thinking. I mean, I'll provide some additional context as to how we think we'll be using the data. So what we could have said is the only way to measure skills and competencies is with a CREST exam. That would have been the easy pathway. We obviously already have that data, and we could have used that to signal this organisation here has skills and competency, because this organisation over here doesn't have any CREST certified individuals, therefore we should assume that they have no skills and competency. We're not sure that that's truthfully the right approach, because we think that organisations and individuals can build skills and competencies through multiple pathways. Jonathan talked about EC Council and SANS and offensive security as pathways that people often might pursue. Instead of saying to somebody, right, okay, you've gone off and taken a whole load of offensive security exams, but for us to signpost your skills and competencies, we now require you to go off and take a CREST certification, feels like an unfair approach, potentially a duplication of effort, and not necessarily a way to broaden the international pool of labour. And so as a consequence, what we plan to do is recognise some of those other certifications and qualifications as a demonstration of suitable skills and competency. What we can't say to you today is this cert is going to equal that cert. The exercise is a little bit bigger than that. We're looking at multiple measurements, including things like experience, specific skills and competencies against specific disciplines, inclusive of training, research, examinations, qualifications, etc. And all of those things will be taken. They will be put into a series of both anonymized and normalized reports, and then our regional councils will then have the ability to go, in our region, this is the minimum set of expectations that we require to signpost skills and competencies back to the buying community. And what that will allow is us to take into account different regional trends. Instead of saying that there is one global measurement for skills and competencies, instead what we will do is look at the different regions that we operate in, look at the different career pathways that exist in each of those regions, and look to try and take that and better reflect that back to the buying community. So hopefully it will result in us having a slightly more nuanced and valuable approach in each of the regions that we operate within. In the meantime, Debbie, has anyone come back with any additional questions?
There certainly is. There's quite a few in now, so I will start working through them. The first one that I'm going to give you is, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of background, really, that they've put in. But we have somebody on here who's representing the CISA Information Security Limited today. They're a CREST approved member under VAPT, and apart from the products and services in cybersecurity over the years, they have also been providing workforce development training and certifications, and have trained over sort of 10,000 people. Now, where they're getting to, their domains, they specialise in things like payment security, secure application, incident detection and response. So the question that they're asking is, does CREST also accredit any of these certifications or titles? If so, could you advise of the process? If not, could you advise how they could build on this and work with CREST and the global markets?
Not sure I fully understand the question. So are we saying that the organisation has their own certifications and how might we recognise them, or is the question slightly different to that?
Yeah, so I think what they're actually saying is they want to build on their relationship with CREST. At the moment, they do sort of training, and they also, some of the domains they specialise in are payment security and secure application. So it's things, are they recognised in certain certifications that you do at the moment, or is this something that could come in as a different certification?
So I think I'm still not 100% clear on what's been asked, but what I can say is the way that the Skilled Persons Register works is that we went off and did a review of all the different global certifications that we're aware of. We're not suggesting that every single one is included, but we did our best to try and be as inclusive as possible. And we look to try and do that across all of the key domains that we deliver accreditation in today. But we also looked beyond that to other widely recognised certification frameworks, from example, ISE Squared, ISACA, etc. And so we've created a framework where people can come in and demonstrate their skills and competencies against specific radio buttons and bullets. But we also have a whole load of areas where people can enter some free text to illustrate additional things beyond the ones that we've explicitly called out. Now, what we hope to be able to do in time is where we see, in a region or in a country, there are a load of people that have chosen a specific pathway, so that we can mine the data more effectively. In future iterations, we expect to take some of those free text areas and build them into more quantitative fields, so that we can go out and measure some of the people that have taken the other certifications that you've described just now. In addition to that, I think you talked about payment security. We're also mindful that there are lots of ways to demonstrate skills and competency, and just focusing on the traditional cyber pen test, incident response, SOC exams probably isn't the right approach. So, for example, if you have gone out and built skills in Azure or AWS, actually, as a pen tester, some of those skills can be really useful. So we actively encourage people to share all of those things with us, so that we can get greater insight as to the skills that exist in the market, so that we can say, okay, moving forwards, if we're building new specialisms, if we're aligning those specialisms to industry schemes, what are the constituent parts that we should be considering to make sure we join all the dots together? So, beyond that, if there's additional insight that the person's looking for that I haven't been able to address, if they want to get in touch with me offline, then I'm happy to follow up further.
That's great. Thank you very much, Roland. So moving on to the next question. Once an individual has registered, are they able to update their profile once they gain further certifications?
Yeah, absolutely. So the process itself has been designed to allow that continuous update of individual profiles and stuff. So the way we've done that is that the skilled person registration form is reusable. So essentially, you'll be able to complete the form again in a very quick matter of minutes, and then just amend the information that's relevant or add additional information to that. So if you achieve a new certification, you can just resubmit that form to CREST with the additional certification, and that will update the skilled person registration.
In addition to that, I think Jonathan mentioned the fact that we'll be issuing people a CREST ID. Really, the CREST ID is an indicator that an individual has, one, completed the skilled persons register, but probably more importantly, they've signed up to our code of conduct. And I guess that is becoming increasingly important as an indicator that the person is aligned to the ideas, the concepts, etc., of a rapidly professionalising industry. Now, that CREST ID will change every year. So there's a country code, which indicates where the individual is based. There is a year code, which obviously indicates the year that they had signed up to the code of conduct. And then there's a unique identifier. And so we would actively encourage people every year to come back into the Skilled Persons portal, update their details. That will then result in them getting a new CREST ID. And any time they're delivering a CREST accredited service, we would ask that people involved in scoping, delivery, or sign off provide that CREST ID to provide greater levels of confidence to the buyer of the service.
That's great. Thank you to you both there. So moving on from that, will member companies have a feedback on the portal on individuals that have completed the registration and individuals that are still outstanding? And who's going to be responsible for following up with these individuals?
So at the moment, the portal doesn't have the capability to demonstrate to the member company which individuals have completed the process. It's kind of a little bit more complex than what the technology allows at the moment. However, what we can do is obviously we get given a list of the individuals that the member would like to register, and on request we can maybe give an update as to which ones we've received registrations for. So if the member emails into the Crest team, we can do that for them to assist. But ultimately, the responsibility for ensuring this is completed falls to the member company. The people that are filling these forms in are employees of these member companies. So there's the responsibility there between the member and their employees to get this process done once it's been started. I guess to act as a confirmation that the individual has completed it, as Roland just mentioned, they would be issued with a Crest ID. So the member could maybe ask their employees for their Crest IDs at the end of the month that they've asked them to complete this process, and that would act as the confirmation that the process has been done. So hopefully that answers the question. As I said, we can be quite creative if there's a specific use case, or if somebody needs a bit more assistance with ensuring that the individuals have done it. Then if they contact us, then we can see what we can do in terms of providing updates and information and so on.
That's great. Thank you very much there, Jonathan. So the next question is with regards to professionals who do not want to complete the information about themselves on the form once their employer has registered them. What happens then?
They don't fill it out. It's that simple. There is the option to opt in or opt out. I guess we are looking to try and present skills and competency back to the market. We can only do that if people tell us what their skills and competency is. If they choose not to, we will just not say anything, I guess is the truthful answer. What we would say is that there are two elements to the process. There's one where we gather some very broad background information, really just so that we can go, we know this person exists and we know this person is delivering services. We then ask a series of questions about their skills and competency, and every single question has the option to opt out or say, I prefer not to ask. Sorry, I prefer that you didn't ask. At the end, they'll still be presented with a code of conduct. They will then be encouraged to read through the code of conduct, understand all of the elements within it, and if they sign up to the code of conduct but choose not to provide information within the skills and competency bit by saying prefer not to answer, they will still be given a Crest ID. It's just that we won't be able to use any of their background skills to say this individual has skills here or this organisation has background there. So we're using it as an opportunity to better connect individuals and organisations that employ individuals with buyers that are looking for services. But it is optional.
Great, thank you very much, Roland. So next question is talking about whether the registration list will be publicly available after successful registration.
That's not the plan initially, no. I couldn't say that in 2 or 3 years' time that there wouldn't be a process where a buyer could do a lookup of an individual. We would imagine there would have to be a whole lot of security controls around that, and that's not built into the process as it stands today, that there is no intention to execute on that as it stands today. The only reason I mention it is that we have spoken to some governments around the world where they are looking at building similar types of things. So it is possible that industry will see a direction of travel where it may be that you take an individual's name, their surname, at some form of identifier, put it into some form of website, and from that go, this person is, is a risk assessor, has 7 years of experience, and has this background. It would be that level of information. We are not doing anything, and we have no plans to do that ourselves. However, we are definitely seeing governments around the world looking at similar types of initiatives. Our expectation with what we have introduced today is that our system is a closed system. It will be used to help organisations that are Crest accredited to better connect with buyers, and we are not imagining a scenario where we will make this information publicly available.
That's great, thank you very much. So once the individual has registered for their CREST ID, how long will it be until they receive that?
So there's a couple of steps in this. So once the members provided the names of the individuals, those individuals will receive an invite within 72 hours to join the portal. So I might as well cover all the timelines. That's what I'm doing. So registration within 72 hours, and then once the application of that individual has been submitted and accepted by CREST, they'll receive the CREST ID at the end of the calendar month. So for example, if they submitted today, they would receive it at the end of this month, and so on. And that just allows us to sort of manage and administer the register in sort of like a timely way.
Great, thank you very much for that. And another one, with what types of certification or sort of certification are you required to show to demonstrate an individual's capability?
So that hasn't been defined. So basically, we're just asking individuals to show us what certifications they do have. So there's no sort of bar at the moment. There's no, you must have this, you must have that. We just want to see what's out there so that we can get a good understanding of where the different regions are in terms of competency, what certifications are more popular in certain countries, and so on. And that will then allow us to complete what we're calling is a competency consultation with the members. So we'll generate a series of reports based on anonymized data that we've gathered, and then we can then look at maybe setting standards in terms of what a junior tester might look like, what a senior tester might look like, and so on. But there is no requirement at the moment, so you don't have to hold a certain certification to be added to the register.
Great, thank you very much. Now, this is an interesting one. We have someone on who's from an academic background. So they were in academia for 10+ years. They've come out and gone into the cybersecurity industry. Now, they don't have any official certifications, but would there be a way to motivate or put on the skills register that they've had prior academic experience on the skilled register, because obviously they used to train students to perform penetration tests and vulnerability assessments?
Yeah, I guess that's actually built into the questions that we're asking. So there's a section that looks at people's experience. There's free text boxes in terms of like experience as well. So if any of the options that we've put in there don't apply or aren't relevant to that individual, they can provide different additional information via the sort of text boxes that we've put in. So we tried to make it, like Roland said, we tried to make it as inclusive as possible. We went out there and looked at what was available, but we can't accommodate every scenario in tick boxes. So absolutely, if they want to demonstrate it in a different way, they'll be able to do that on the form as well.
Great, thank you. And this probably goes a little bit back to the public profile, but just a bit more of a specific question on this. So will the registration list be linked to the members' existing profiles so that clients can see exactly who is available to provide that service?
So Roland might pick up as well on this. No, it won't, like the individuals won't be in a granular level. It won't be like, okay, Jonathan Armstrong has this much experience. But what we will do is we'll take the information that the individuals that work for those members has provided, we'll anonymize it, and then we'll be able to turn that into a bunch of additional questions that we can ask within the buyer's journey. So there's questions about experience in relevant sectors. So we could, in theory, ask, are you looking for a supplier with experience in the energy sector, for example? And where a member company's demonstrated via this process that their team has relevant experience in that, we could then point to that member company and say, this member company has relevant experience in that industry. That's kind of like the sort of, the concept that we're thinking of in terms of displaying members back to buyers. So that will allow us to be a lot more targeted with the way we connect the buyer with the supplier, as opposed to now you just appear on a list of 200, 300 people depending on what discipline you've selected, and we'll be able to reduce that based on the skills and competencies held within the teams that are actually delivering the services. So hopefully that sort of answers that question for you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Now, I just want to, I'm looking through some of these questions, and some of them have been exam orientated. So just to let you know, we will go to the examinations team and get an answer for you and come back on email, so that you know, you do get an answer. But I think it would be better to come from that examinations team on some of these questions. So thank you very much for putting those in. But yeah, we'll follow up from that side. So I think one of the questions that's coming out of here really at the moment is, you know, the concerns over whether this might be heavily administrative for some organisations, and what would you say to, you know, to the people? There's been a couple of questions that have said, will this be a lot of work for those organisations, especially those bigger organisations?
Yeah, I'll go. So in terms of the actual organisation, in my opinion, no, not at all, because all we're asking for is the name and email address of the individuals that are working for them. So if they're providing CREST accredited services, we want to know the name of the individual and what their email address is. And then what CREST will do is we'll send emails to all those individuals saying, hey, you've been invited to the CREST membership application portal, you know, register here. Once they've registered, they then just need to fill in the form. The form itself, I think, is relatively quick to fill in. You know, for the individual, we're just asking for some basic information about themselves so we can identify them, and then some information about their skills and competency. So in terms of the administrative burden, personally, I don't think there is one. But I appreciate that there are probably some organisations out there that are a little bit more complex. They've got sort of multiple offices in various different regions, you know, so that the individual that we communicate with on a regular basis might not have as much insight to those other offices. So in those scenarios, we're open to working with the member to help resolve those situations. So if it means that we have to correlate some information from various different people and then do the upload that way, absolutely, we'll work with those companies. But for the vast majority of our members, I don't imagine that it will be that much of a burden to complete the process.
Yeah, I mean, the only element that's centralised as a requirement is the need to send out email addresses. So once that has been sent to the accreditation team, there is no further centralised requirement for the organisation. Now, it may well be that some of our members go, well, actually, it sounds like a really straightforward ask, but our organisation is really complicated and, you know, disparate, and I don't know all the people. And we go, okay, well, that's fine. We don't have to try and boil the ocean, but what we do need to do is have a better view than what we have today. So, you know, tell us what you can tell us, and do the best job you can to share as much information as you can about your teams. Because the flip side, and we see this increasingly, is that organisations, large organisations, often consulting practices, will go, yeah, I'm a CREST accredited company, I'm international, I pay a fee. And they respond to global RFPs and go, yeah, I'm a CREST member company, I can go off and do some stuff. You know, as part of that, the buyer then you know, assumes that the person that's delivering a service understands what it means to be a CREST accredited, understands the methodology, is going to have a consistent approach to delivering services. But actually, the person that rocks up and does the work is massively disconnected from that whole accreditation process. And so what we have is this disconnect or asymmetry of information occurring again, where a buyer thinks that they're getting somebody that has signed up to the CREST Code of Conduct, somebody that is delivering a service that in essence has been rigorously assessed and gone through the accreditation process. But in actual fact, because they were in a disparate region or hadn't been internally briefed, they weren't in tune with what the expectation was in the accreditation process. So by us explicitly saying, tell us all those people within your organisation, get them to sign up to the Code of Conduct, we have greater levels of assurance that they know what is required of them, but most importantly, buyers know, or buyers have more confidence that those individuals have signed up to a Code of Conduct. So the reason we're doing this is because we're being asked to find better ways to deliver assurance by governments, regulators and buyers. And we've tried to make it as decentralized as possible.
Great, thank you very much. Now we are nearing the end of the webinar. I will just slip in one more question into that. So thank you very much. If there are any other questions that we haven't got to, we will go through them at the end and we will come back to you personally. I have seen another question on there about training. So just to let you know, we will come back to you on that one. But this question's with regards to the process. So when does the process begin? When can they start this process?
It's been live now for approximately 2 months, so you can start the process today and, and provide the list of individuals to Crest, and then obviously we can get them registered. And if they submit within the next few weeks, they'll get their ID pretty quickly. So we would strongly encourage members to start the process as soon as possible. But as Roland said, you know, it's optional, but there will be things coming in the future that will benefit the members that have completed the process. So as I said, it's live now. If you have any problems with accessing any of the programs we've talked about, so i.e. the account registration or the skilled person registration program, just contact them into the accreditation team, and we can have a look at your access to the portal to ensure that it's all set up properly.
Just on that last note, we will be launching a new program end of July, beginning of August, where completion for skilled persons register will be a requirement. So we're quite excited about what this new program will bring to the market. Again, it is being actively sort of encouraged by a number of governments and regulators and big international partners that we're working with, where they have explicitly said, we need these things to be in place: Crest IDs, signed code of conduct, etc. So organisations that have gone through the process in advance obviously will be in a strong position to be able to move forward with that program when it's launched. Can't talk to you more about it just now, but it's certainly you know, watch our social media channels throughout July and into early August. There'll be some big releases that will describe it in more depth then.
That's very exciting. Thanks for that, Roland. And so everybody, please keep your eyes out for that one as more information comes out. So we have come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much to everyone who's asked those questions. As I say, any that we haven't got to, we will go through afterwards and we will come back to you. Any that you think about when you're going away and you want to find out a bit more information, obviously the accreditation team are there on hand to answer any of your questions, so please feel free to get in touch with them. So thank you very much. I will hand over to Roland and Jonathan just for a last couple of words to everyone.
That was unexpected. Just thank you again for making the time to join the webinar this morning. As I say, really what we're trying to do through this process is be more inclusive, give our members more opportunity to demonstrate skills and competency, as opposed to, you know, pigeonhole them into one specific way. You know, take a Crest exam and that's the only way that you'll ever have the ability to demonstrate skills and competency back to the market. We recognise that some of you will be nervous because I guess it's a slightly new program, and you want to see how it plays out, but we approach it purely with positive intent. The reason why we're doing this is so that we can signpost organisations that have built skills and competencies with some of those other training providers, and really signpost to buyers those organisations that are operating up here, doing things that are cutting edge with great levels of skills and competency in a much more effective fashion than what we can do today. So obviously, if anyone has any further questions, feel free to get in touch either with me directly or with Jonathan following on from this session.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate you all taking your time out today. Now, do remember, you can see the next webinar, which will go over the skills register. So if you've got any colleagues out there or anybody that you think really needs to listen to this webinar, please pass on the details and get them to register. There is still time. It's at 4:30 British Summer Time over here, so please feel free to join that webinar. So thank you very much to Roland and Jonathan for taking their time to go through that presentation and answer your questions. As I say, any other questions, please feel free to put them through, and we will get back to any that we didn't answer on here. So thank you. Take care, everybody, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.